Good morning and welcome to Soul of Travel, Voices of Women. I'm so excited today to have Maria Pacheco joining us again from Guatemala. The last season when we spoke, we talked a lot about traveling to Guatemala. I had traveled there last year. I would actually have been just returning from there this year if life were the way we had thought it might have been. And so I'm so excited to have you with me here today, especially during this moment when I've really been missing Guatemala and that experience. So good morning.
Good morning, Christine. It's so great to be here again and talk about things that move us and
Yeah.
make us think. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and we had, I think, probably a long list of things that we still wanted to talk about, and probably at the end of today, another long list, but we'll just move through some of the things. For those of you who didn't listen to our last conversation, Maria is the founder of Wakami Global in Guatemala, and the reason I wanted her to come back on during this season, particularly for Voices of Women, is because of the impactful work that you do in Guatemala and the recognition you've received for that and how much it inspires me. So I want to spread that to everyone else who might be listening. And I just want to start kind of at our roots with talking a little bit about Wakami and the artisan group and how that got started. And I just want to begin with the idea, the thought that you always say, which is individual dreams are powerful and collective dreams are unstoppable. And that is something that resonates with me so strongly. I know sometimes we feel like we have this huge aspiration or vision or wish to create impact, and it feels difficult to do it alone. And I have found that there's not really a reason to do that. Like sometimes we have to get started alone, but there's so many people who are always surrounding us who I feel like come along to help us carry on in our mission, and we bring the people along with us who need us, and that builds that support. So it really becomes a community and collaborations that just keep evolving. So if you want to just talk a little bit about that collective dream and Wakami and where that began.
Yeah, no, and if there's something I learned more and more is the power of collective dreams. Yeah, I think for us in Guatemala, the word dream is very important because sometimes the reality is very hard. So the dream is the one thing you hold on to that gives you the energy. And for us in Guatemala, we really started thinking about that because there, like I was saying, like in communities where we were working, I was just telling Christine, we started working in communities about 30 years ago. The war was still going on. After the war, more people were dying from poverty. And but I think that the importance of dreams is to allow you to say, okay, this is where we are now, but we want to be somewhere else. And the whole journey of trying to create change is, it's like a GPS. You're here, you want to get here, you know, what do you need to do? But like you said, Christine, I think I started like having this dream of my own, and it just started because I was like, oh my God, it's so horrible to be part of a country that allows children to die, women to die, this war to be going on. And first it felt like, you know, you want to just run away from the world, like moments like sometimes in this world are like that again. But just saying, okay, you know, what would move me? What would make a difference? And so starting to work alone on that dream or with somebody else. And then as you walk this journey, you realize more people join, and some will join for a little bit and leave, but others will stay with you for a long time. And instead of being Maria's dream or Patricio's dream, like the first guy in the villages, it becomes a collective dream where everybody gives something different and gets something out different, but together we're creating that change. And I think that's what gives me so much hope, that it's not just on you anymore, but you are supporting others and working with others to make change happen.
Mm-hmm. And so Wakami is an artisan cooperative that creates opportunities for women in rural communities in Guatemala, and with the mission of transforming the cycles of poverty that we see to prosperity. How does that work? I know that investing in women is really important to create change. Can you speak to that and why that is so important?
Yeah, and like, what we were saying, when we're going to the villages, sometimes that's outsiders, we don't exactly know what's needed. I was touched by seeing the reality, but it was really the women that said, if you help us sell what we produce, the rest we can do. I mean, I was a biologist, I got a degree in agriculture, and it's like, what do you guys do, right? So that's where we started, seeing what the values, what the skills of the women were, seeing their products, but also realizing after trying to sell those products that we needed to really create a system where we would be looking at that market, what customers, what women in the world would want, and to design products for them, but that could be made by the villages, by the women, because those are their skills. And that's how Wakami was born as a brand. And what we do is like, we work, Wakami is a business, and with the women that we work, they each become individual businesses. So it's like a value chain of businesses. Their business sells to us, and we sell, to threads or to other people, and that's how it works. And just really realizing that for the women, having that first source of income becomes key for the empowerment and for change to happen. But in Guatemala, because women, usually the average school attendance is 3-4 years. So it's very hard for a woman to start a business and just for me to say, guys, we need this, send it to us. So we have a methodology to incubate those businesses. So we have technicians that speak the local language that go to the village once a week for 2 years at least, to make sure that as the orders start coming in, they start growing as business people with the legal requirements, the quality control requirements, and so that's how the system works. You can't just order something. These villages are remote. There's no logistics. You have to set it up together with them. Mm-hmm. But it's also their dream to be able to be part of a global economy. So their dream of doing that, and my dream, and Wakami's dream of saying, how do we, create prosperity? Those two come together to create Wakami as a brand of personal handmade accessories. Yeah.
I really love that it is not just a system of ordering and placing orders. My interaction, and I'm so lucky to have met some of the women leading artisan groups, and to see how empowered they are to be leaders in their communities, to start their businesses, to take the skills they learn through the Wakami training program and really apply it even to other businesses, and becoming mentors to other women that they know and work with. It ripples out really quickly. And so I think that's where you really see the importance of investing in women, is because of the way we connect and the way we nurture. Then if we have the success, we want the success for the other people that we love and that are around us and who need to have those same needs met. And so we don't keep the success to ourselves, I guess. We want the success for everyone. And so I loved witnessing that unfolding when I was in Guatemala.
And we learned first about that with Vital Voices. Like, I'm part of Vital Voices, this global movement of women that really started in the US. And, Guatemala is a machista country. So the worst part of that is not just that men are not good to women, it's that women are not good to women, right? But once you see the power of, when I went to the US for the first time to Vital Voices and saw women celebrating me, collaborating with me, it was a discovery, and it really, once women can be empowered and tap into that role of supporting each other, I mean, really we go a long way. So like you say, the women in the villages say, okay, some of them have been with us 14 years. They say, okay, my kids are out of college even now. But there's other women with young kids. We want to keep this going. We want to now make a difference for them. It's no longer about my kids. It's the other women's kids. And you see that women lead differently. And that's what we've learned with Vital Voices, And there's exceptions, but usually women, when they have power, when they have a good opportunity, they want to spread it. Like, it can't be kept within us, Right. So yeah, and just to see these women empowered, like you saw, right now, for example, with school attendance, there's no internet in the villages. Kids are not going to school. So some of the women have taken it to them teaching classes and then going to the kids. And so there's, once somebody is empowered, they can just, create the change that they want to create for their community.
Yeah, action becomes much more possible. For people listening, Vital Voices is a global movement that invests in women leaders who are solving challenges around the world. And I know they just launched a book that I'm really excited. I'm waiting to get it, the 100 Women Using Their Power to Empower. And again, I think that's so important because I feel like it's almost trendy to say women, empowering women in this certain time, but it's so important because we really see ourselves in each other and then are able to take these steps that we maybe have held ourselves back from. And it does empower one another, especially when we're connecting authentically. And I loved that traveling in Guatemala, and that's why I created Lotus Sojourns, to create those global connections and interactions so that we can really inspire one another. And I know when I travel, I learn as much from the women I'm meeting when I travel as hopefully they are from me, and that it's a mutual exchange of inspiration and support. And I think it's really important when we live kind of in our own bubble, we kind of get lost. And I'm sure this time you've seen that too, where we're all really isolated and we kind of forget, even if we were on that path of success or really moving forward, everything has kind of halted. But to be able to just sit and share space with people who are going through the same experiences, even in a completely different way, it's really eye-opening and allows just this great freedom, I guess. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's a really magical thing.
No, and I think, like you say, I think sometimes as women, we tend to think of what we do as small, as not important. I remember before I went to Vital Voices in 2006, I was like, okay, I'm working in the villages. All my friends thought I was crazy for not, I came back from Cornell, from a master's, didn't go to work for a big company. I said, I want to go to the villages. And like people just thinking we're crazy. And I think in myself, like, like, I'm just working with these villages. I'm doing what I love. We're working together. We're, planting trees, that first initiative. And when I went to Vital Voices, they said, wow, Maria, that's a big deal, what you're doing. And, and you're a leader. And I'm like, what, and you're a social entrepreneur. And I'm like, what, like for me, it was just in my head, I'm doing what I like and not seeing how important it is. So I think a lot of women, we're all like that. So Vital Voices for me, not just allowed me to connect, like you said, with other women and share deeply, but it also allowed me to see myself in a little bit different light and see that what I was doing was important. And if many of us did that, it was going to be really important. So yeah.
I love that. I mean, also one of the things that really drew me to you initially is that I see your heart in the work that you do. And I know that is why you were doing it. And I love that it was a surprise to you that you were a leader and creating great change, and that someone had to reach out and honor you for you to see that. Because I feel like some people maybe set out to create change for their resume, right? For it being something they can say that they did. And then there's some people who, like you just are doing the thing that makes your heart happy and meeting the needs of your community and just doing the next right thing one step at a time. And so I feel really honored that I get to witness that in you, and just kind of it inspires me to keep working in that way, because I know it's what I want to do as well. And I think that's really beautiful, to connect with someone that it's just from their heart. And I see that in the whole community of Wakami that I've experienced, is everybody is operating from their heart for the good of everyone. And it's such an amazing thing. And I know that starts with you and ripples out, but it's great to be a part of that.
No, and like we were talking earlier, Christine, and I think for everybody listening, I think sometimes we feel like changing the world is disconnected from what we like to do, or And for me, it's, it's different when people say, oh, Maria, but you're going to the villages. I say, what are you talking about? I love the villages. I mean, I love being in contact with nature. I love having to dress informally. There's nobody you need to impress. So it really, and I love trees. I love plants. I'm a tree hugger. So it really, it's beautiful when you realize that every one of us has a talent that we bring into the world. And that's what we call the passion. And if that passion, we use it to live a good life, but also to transform other people's lives. I think that's beautiful. In Wakami, we say global change begins at home. And at first I thought home is Guatemala, then with the quarantine, home is the house, and now home is us, and what you were talking about, how we transform, as we transform us, and we mix it with our passion and the gift for the world, and we unite that with other people's passions and gifts. That becomes a beautiful energy that can transcend the harshness of the moment.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a really important thing to connect to. And I know that we were talking about this a little bit before in our conversation before we hopped on, but I know that at one point in your career, you were actually asked to run as a vice presidential candidate on a ticket in Guatemala. And I know reading about that and thinking about that, your first impulse would be like, well, of course you would do that. That's an honor. That's an aspiration that people would seek, and important, and all of these kind of things that would be wrapped around an offer like that. And you didn't choose to do that, and you chose to follow where your heart was really leading for you. And so I would love for you to share like what that awareness was for you, because it really influenced where you went from that time. And I think that's important for other women to know, like we can follow our dreams and not just check boxes.
Yeah, no, for me, like every time, that I talk, and sometimes when I went to Vital Voices, just, talking about the dreams of changing my country and everything. And of course, like Secretary Clinton and Kay Bailey Hutchinson were at the heart of Vital Voices. I mean, it was born as within a political environment. Everybody's like, when are you going to run for president? When are you going to run for president? And, it actually got into my head, like maybe, I could be a leader for the country like that. Especially for us that, people that say, I want to create massive change, you want to create massive change, government is the way to do it. But then as time went by, I realized that the way that I am, I wouldn't be a good, I don't think, or now anyway, I could be a good politician, first because it's not what I'm about, and realize that, yeah, I could have a lot of power, but I have to give up a lot of what I really love. And part of what I love of my work is nobody has to vote for me to do it. There's people that are waiting for opportunities, and it's like, it's so that I love, the freedom in which you can operate, and the honesty to your values in which you can operate. I think to be a politician means you have to sometimes give up certain things. There's negotiation. That's all part of politics. And I saw myself as saying, you know what, maybe Wakami is not going to be so massive, but if we can create this space that inspires others, that teaches, that where we learn other ways to be, this is a magical space. It doesn't matter how big it is, but it's a space that is transformational, where alchemy happens, where, people come in with thinking they're poor, and they live thinking they're rich and knowing they're rich. And so it really took me a lot of going inside and saying, what's really important, the outside power or just being honest to who I am? And that's why I said, thank you, but no, I will stay with Wakami, and I will collaborate. Wakami has collaborated many times with government projects, where what we have learned in our small space becomes one of those projects. It was where the World Bank and the IDB became a $60 million loan to Guatemala to replicate what we were doing. So yeah, I think to everybody out there, it's like, really, you're going to change the world best from using your talents and from doing what you love to do the most. The small twitches, you're not doing it just for yourself, but you're doing it for yourself, for your community, and for the world. And I think that's where, but it's been, hard, just like, do I want to be a politician? Or when things go back in the country, I didn't run, but one of my best friends from Vital Voices did run for vice president for one of the strongest parties. She learned a lot. It was tough. She's always used to winning. So she's like, oh, come, we didn't win. But she's learned a lot and saying, maybe this is where I want to make my career. So it's just being, who are we and what is what we're about, and being true to that. And it might manifest in different ways, but it's not, okay, politician, check. No, doesn't work like that for me anyway.
And it can be hard because sometimes what we really feel in our heart doesn't necessarily lay out on paper like we had planned. Like we often set out with a vision for who we think we are, and we find out along the way, like we are a part of that, and it's different than the social suggestions of who we should be and how we should show up. Just as you were speaking, it reminded me of the Nawal that I received when I was in Guatemala that talked about your characteristics and who you are based on your Mayan sign and
Yes.
the deer. And I remember reading one of the things was that in order for someone who has that sign to be strong is that they have to live their inside on their outside, like they have to match. And I actually just was reading that before this, and I was the same sign that I have, and I was like, oh, it's so true. Like every time I fight against that, it falls apart.
Exactly.
So I think that learning and listening to ourselves really does send us in the right direction to have the biggest impact. And so it's like you said, the change starts at home and then it ripples out. And
yet it's the hardest thing to hear ourselves, right?
Yes.
And there's many voices. So which one is the voice within ourselves? And as women, I think we doubt ourselves a lot. Is this voice real? Is this? But I think that, being able to fine tune into that voice, that's what makes the difference. I didn't know you were a deer. Kiej, K-I-E-J is the Mayan well for that. And so deer are meant to create a balance between nature and people. Deer are about bringing together the 4 races of the world, the 4 cardinal points, the 4 energies of earth, wind, fire. So we're like uniting, and it says that harmony is the most important thing for us, but the harmony comes from being inspired in beauty as well. So yeah, the Mayans were wise people, because when I saw I was like, why am I the way I am? And my parents are like this. And then I saw my Mayan sign, and it's like, definitely. Now these Mayans know why I am like that.
Yeah. I felt the same. And when I went through the ceremony, the woman that was with us that was translating, she was like, oh yes, like this I see, like I just see it in you, and my friend that was with me as well. And it was really validating for me to like see myself through that lens. So it was really great. I'm gonna go from there, I guess, right into talking about agriculture and right now the projects that you have with sustainable food projects and regenerative agriculture practices, and actually I'll back that up. So I mentioned I was supposed to be in Guatemala this last week.
Yeah.
Being a sojourn, so a lot sad about that, but I will be there soon as I can. But in that absence of travel, it really got me thinking about all these communities that I love to visit when I am traveling, and what could the Lotus Sojourns community do for not only the communities I visit, but my other colleagues. And so I wanted to create awareness about what happens when the tourism dollars disappear. Like it's a big ripple effect. It's not just that we don't get to go on a vacation. So many things are in place, especially when you travel in a way that supports local communities, which is what is important to me. And so I wanted to, 1, create awareness to that impact, 2, find a way that I could still support those communities, and 3, find a way to continue to build community amongst the people who would be traveling or who may travel in the future. And so I launched Lotus Communities and reached out to you and said, I want to support Wakami. What projects do you have going on right now? And it was like, of course, perfect timing. That you guys are really focusing on this agricultural asset for your communities. So I would love to talk a little bit about that work. And I know it brings you back home, like you just said, like into the dirt and growing things and bringing that part of yourself to the Wakami artisans as well.
Yeah, no, for us, and thank you, you know, like I was getting chills as you were talking because this connection means so much. For us, I think when the COVID hit, it hit us in two ways. And it was like, you know, we were trying to get masks for everybody, and the mask, even the disposable ones at the beginning were $10. And I'm like, where are the women in the villages going to find this? So our first initial reaction was, okay, you know, how do we get the women protected? And that's where the mask making project started. And now we sell masks, but it was very important. But second was, oh my God, markets are going to be in and out of these communities, but where's the food going to come from? And that really worried me because Guatemala is already a place where 50% of people suffer chronic malnutrition. So that means the quality of food is not good. And it was like, with no jobs, with the communities closed for COVID, where are people going to eat? So we had been looking a little bit at that with a Guatemalan leader that lives in the US that really developed a regenerative agriculture methodology that starts with hens that, you know, lay eggs, and then so the community immediately starts having protein, which is something that is not easily available. And then with the chickens, with the manure in the field to start growing other crops. So it seemed to me, I had been an organic farmer for 10 years, but more focused on export crops. And it's like, no, the native, if we have the chicken manure in the farm, and it just made click so that we got started thinking about a pilot. And when COVID happened, some projects we had with the Embassy of Sweden and FAO were like, let's just totally switch to regenerative agriculture. And it makes so much sense because now, you know, through Wakami or through coffee, which is another, these communities have an international market. But now with the regenerative agriculture, first they have food for themselves. Eggs and native plants have a good market locally. And now as more women start doing this, we can go regionally. Like then, you know, if you have 10 women doing this in a village, we can come to Antigua to the restaurants and have so you can have a personal market, a local market, a regional market, and a national market. And so, and it's beautiful because you already, you know, when we thought of this project, it's like, oh, we're gonna try to see who wants to do it. When we went to the villages, women had already attempted a lot of this, but without the technical support. So they're like, now it's like, oh my God, you know, they said, you know, every time we get a project, there's a politician winning our votes, but this is so good. And so now you go to the villages, you see the chickens, you see the eggs, you see the native crops growing, and you see women now, because they have to sell, you know, going to stores and starting to, so it even is harder than just, you know, doing the Wakami jewelry, because now they really, it's a full being a business leader. And it's beautiful to see that it's based on the richness of the country. You know, Guatemala, we have very bad social indicators, but the diversity and the soil and the weather allows for organic agriculture year round, you know. So for me, it's back to basics. It's back to the communities. It's back to honoring people and the earth. And we're still experimenting that the feed of the chickens is the most expensive thing. So now we're going to try, you know, more local food for the chickens, and that brings other people into the value chain. So it starts really becoming a circular economy where everything, you know, goes around in the ecosystem, and money coming from the outside from other value chains dynamizes the whole local economy. But if one day there's not that market, there's food in the villages. And so I love the word food autonomy. And that means that communities, you know, if one day there's not a market for X or W reason, they have their own food and they can feed their families and the community.
Yeah, I love that. And it really got me thinking about food production in the United States too. And I often think about this when I travel, because most of the time you're consuming food locally. You don't have the privilege in many other countries to be eating, you know, bananas from Ecuador and pineapples from, you know, all these places that we get food imported in the United States. And the food is really delicious because it's local and it hasn't been transported, and it really tells the story of the place you are because it's from the place. And so I was even thinking about it a little bit from a tourism perspective, that creating these gardens, it just adds one more thing too that they can share with people when they visit. And I know I did visit a few organic gardens, and I couldn't believe, like you said, the abundance and the richness. And I had never seen kale look like trees. I mean, I just never seen things growing the way it grows in Guatemala. And so I think that when you look at it from that perspective too, like, it's just another way to connect people to the culture and the land and the place, and really get an understanding of the environmental impacts and the social impacts. Like, it creates that conversation. And so I'm really excited about that, just being one more tool for connection for the communities, and when we travel, to have those meaningful moments. So I'm looking forward to that, and eating really delicious food from the community.
Yeah, you know, Guatemala, like if you want to change climate, all you have to do is change altitude. You know, it's a small country, but with all the ecosystems. So, you know, within 40 minutes of walking, you can go through 3 different ecosystems, which gives you that diversity of plants.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. Guatemala has a lot of the superfoods, you know, like avocado, and I mean, there's many chia seeds, amaranth. I mean, those are all, you know, a lot of the Latin American countries have those superfoods. But like you say, I think for me, that my vision now of, you know, like what is a true celebration these days is what I call the shared table. You know, so when you have a table with all the food grown locally, and people from the village and people from other communities, like you guys came, and we're all sharing at that table, but, and, you know, in honoring the earth and honoring each other. So for me, the concept of a shared table that is from, you know, from farm to the table right there, it's like, that's for me the symbol right now of prosperity, of richness, of wealth, of abundance, of gratefulness, you know, all as a community sharing one table. So, and with this regenerative agriculture, we're being able to do it, you know.
Yeah.
Just waiting for, like you said, you know, when the fact that people can't travel really affects these communities that were set up for tourism.
Mm-hmm.
So finding these other ways becomes key, and knowing that when things are good, your seat at the table is waiting for you and everybody that wants to come to Guate.
Thank you. I think it's so powerful too, because we did see with the loss and the halt of travel, how places are impacted, that this is a project that not only, you know, serves as something interesting and interactive for a travel experience, but it goes beyond that and does serve the community. So it serves both needs. It creates opportunity in both directions. It's not like having a vendor store or something where if you have no travelers, then you're not left with anything. When you are growing food that you're then sharing with the community and inviting travelers in, it has that benefit as well. And so I really love that idea. And then the idea of abundance, mirrored through celebrating the land. I think that's really beautiful. It like reinforces the value of culture and the planet and the earth, and just shows that importance not only to people who might be traveling there, but to the people who live there, who maybe have lost that connection or lost that appreciation for that abundance. I know when I've been traveling, for one story in Africa, and they were showing me all the things. Again, it was in Uganda, and it was another place much like Guatemala, where it's just so lush and everything grows, and the bounty of things that they could provide was endless. It just wasn't a financial thing that they could give. And it was really beautiful to hear them talk about what they had in that way. And then in planting, one time I was volunteering in along the Amazon, and we planted palm and all these other things in the garden behind the school that the kids helped to grow so that they could learn about growing. But then they had food that they prepared for us for a lunch. And the whole process of like planting with them, learning about the plants, things that I had never eaten, and then eating them and having them share, when I look back on that, it's such a powerful connection. And every time I see a dish like that somewhere else, it like draws me right back to that moment, into that love, into that abundance that I felt. And so I really think it just has so many levels, like you said, like it kind of connects the dots, like it just comes right back to where it should.
And through going back to basics, you know, my brother, he's a missionary, he's a priest, and he says, Maria, I've learned that poor people it's not related to how much you have, it's related to how much you're willing to share. And so, you know, when these communities have this abundance of crops, they will give you food, you will eat, you will come home with. And so it really brings back the energy of abundance and sharing, that then of course it's important to have the money as well, but it starts by being experimented at that level. So, you know, you go to a community here and you come back with mangoes and chicken. Sometimes I say, no, you know, that'd be harder for me, but avocados, the mangoes, the everything. And it's all based on what's already here, what's already in the villages. It's just valuing it and finding a way to, for it to really generate wealth. And to reconnect the communities, because, you know, when women have not been educated, they think maybe, oh, a soda or junk food, it's packaged, so it must be clean and it must be better. And when you're able to reconnect to know, you know, of course we need clean water in the communities, and that's one of the other challenges. But once you have that, how, you know, all that they have really takes on and you value for them. And when you honor where you are and what you are, that's the first empowerment, right? When you're proud of your roots. And regenerative agriculture allows for that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful model for creating that connection and bringing you back home. I know that you also mentioned, you know, beyond meeting this initial need for food, even today that you were experiencing the follow-up of a hurricane. And so, you know, just thinking about, and for people that haven't traveled somewhere like Guatemala, what that means for roads washing out and bridges washing out. And again, food access becomes really, really important issue. So it kind of goes beyond the parameters of COVID. Like, this is something that is so important to have in place and really will help to support the communities in the long run.
Yeah, no, like where you were saying, you know, with the hurricane that was 2 weeks ago, some of our communities were disconnected. And now I just got the communication that the bridges are off for 2 or 3 of the communities where we work. And my first thought was like, oh my God, now, you know, the farmer's going to have so many chickens. What are we going to, so many eggs, you know, what are we going to do? And then it was like, oh my God, he's going to be able to feed his community now with those eggs. And that's exactly what's happening, you know, like, and so his community is starting to value the women or the men that have these farms, because now it's like there's food locally. And today the only thing we're saying is, because electricity went off as well, now we're going to find the solar energy kit so that they can have access to phone and to light. But yeah, when you know, a river goes through these things, that the families are disconnected for a long time. And with, you know, it's hard for the government to, you know, reinvest again in those bridges and everything when it happens so one after the other. So yeah, these people are now heroes in their communities because they are being able to feed, you know, the families there with their product. Mm-hmm. So it's taken on a whole different dimension as well, right?
Yeah. I think it's so amazing, and it allowed them to solve one problem, which then empowers you to solve another problem, right? Which may be the solar. They'll say, you know, we didn't know that we could invest in this regenerative agriculture, but we've tried it before and we didn't thrive in growing things, but now they've had that success. And so it just makes it easier then to take the next step. And then, you know, solar power might be something that they navigate. And then what's the next step? Well, the clean water, and it just keeps building as a community. Yeah.
But it all starts and it grows faster as they are more sure of themselves and they recognize themselves as leaders and as change makers, you know, and that's a key to all of this at the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're happy now asking how many eggs and how many chickens and how many cracked eggs, and, you know, like all the indicators are changing, but it's fun to see now the beets growing, the Swiss chard growing, all the other native plants that have different names in Spanish, and And just to see everything growing and being circled around, and the chicken manure going back to the coffee or going back to the organic gardens, and just other people working together, because now they will depend on each other for, you know, some that produce the food for the chickens, the other have the eggs, the other. So you start really having instead of like a poverty spiral down, it's a prosperity spiral up. And it's just providing the opportunities and part of the knowledge, and then, you know, they run with the knowledge because it was embedded in them. It's just temporarily forgotten, I would say.
Right. Yeah. I love that so much.
I love for all of you listening, and then for you, Christine, to be back here and be able to, you know, to sit at one of those tables and listen to the women. Like one of the women, her husband is in the US, and she's saying, oh, if this grows, you know, I hope he can come back, because again, Guatemala is a country with only 20 out of 100 people with a formal job. The rest of the 80% have to figure out what to do, and it's hard when COVID plus hurricane plus a lot of stuff. So yeah, it's just fun to hear her, you know, cry of, I mean, hear her tell her story, but now how there's hope at the end of that story. Her two kids are going to college, and, you know, like it's beautiful stories of change that we can create for each other as we work together.
Yeah, excellent. I'm happy to just continue to see how we can grow and support one another, and to keep bringing more people into the conversation so that it just keeps building. And I just wanted to share for anybody who's listening, and we were talking about the Lotus Communities that I launched. I have mine on today, which it says, "She will move mountains." And when I saw that quote, I really thought of those women that I met in Guatemala, and they were moving mountains. And the quote, I don't have the whole quote in front of me, I should have brought it, but it says, it's something like, "Let her sleep now, for when she wakes, she will move mountains." And like, the women are waking up and they're moving the mountains, and it's so exciting to be able to witness that and to share in a part of that journey. And so this month, with Lotus Communities, $10 from every shirt is going towards these agriculture projects. And I'm also going to roll that over into December, because I had a goal of what I wanted to raise for Wakami and for these projects, and I didn't reach it. This is the beginning of this initiative for me. So December is also going to be celebrating this work in Guatemala, and I'm going to be announcing the new design for the shirts. Every month will be a new design, kind of limited edition, with an inspirational quote that kind of taps into the community. And actually, I haven't even shared with anybody yet, but it's going to be "Together We Rise," which I think is,
I love that. I'm getting chills as you say this quote.
Yeah, so I'm so happy to be able to create awareness and do whatever I can to support and continue to build community. And so I'll share with this conversation how people can connect with Lotus Communities and also with Wakami. And if there's any other projects right now, or any way that people listening can reach out to support Wakami and to learn more about anything that you would like to share, I'd like to give you the space for that as well.
No, thank you. First, I mean, I got chills. Those quotes are so true. You know, with the women from Vital Voices, because we launched Vital Voices in Guatemala to try to, you know, mentor other women. But the truth is, we've been walking together with like 8 women, and we are like each other's support. And together, like one of them, I mean, each one is doing very different things that are breaking the glass ceiling for women in Guatemala, and it's because we're all together. Yeah. So no, one of the things that you can go to Wakami Foundation. We are raising money for scholarships for the different villages. Before, Wakami used to give like smaller amounts of scholarships, especially for junior high school and high school, because those are not free, you have to pay. But now with, you know, less people with work, those are going to be bigger. So you can actually go to the Wakami Foundation, and there's donations for, you can choose which community you want to do. So that's helping a lot. And working with you on the shirts, I have some ideas, because we're starting a screen printing workshop with some of the women. So I don't know, I think there's so much to do, but I think the most important thing, I love what you're creating, this community. I think there's just, my imagination sparks, as you said, you know, the Lotus Communities and what we can do together. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for thinking about us. Thank you for that connection. And for everybody listening, you know, like I think this moment's call for being heroes, all of us, and stepping out of our fear and just doing what we want to do, and knowing that there'll be a community to stand by you and to support you. So thank you for this. Like I said, your seat at the table is here. It's set for one day we can join, we can celebrate. But thank you for not forgetting about us. And I want to see more of the t-shirt project with you. It's beautiful t-shirts that inspire us all. So thank you for doing this, Christine. It'd be easy for you to forget about this and say we'll get started when things happen again. But to keep this connection, I'm grateful for. So thank you so much.
Thank you. My heart will always have a little piece waiting for me in Guatemala as well. So thank you so much for being with me today and for sharing this with everybody who's listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine.